Hello and good morning, good Tuesday morning, Karabo Morule. How are you?
I'm fine, and yourself, Adi?
I'm doing great. I'm so happy to have you here. I know you're busy and I was trying to get hold of you and I caught you in between meetings, but eventually we pinned it down.
Yeah. And I'm very, very happy to be here.
Thank you. And I'm so pleased to have you. And for those who don't know you, I mean, it's a real treat for me. In the press, you have been quoted as being a finance heavyweight. Okay.
Very generous.
A qualified actuary.
Yeah.
The ex-managing director of personal finance at Old Mutual. You're ex-JP Morgan. You've been for the part of the World Economic Forum Young Global Leaders of 2018, and more currently a non-executive director of one of the newest banks in South Africa, Tyme Bank.
Yep.
Amazing.
Yeah.
What a lovely profile.
Yeah. It's great.
Right.
It's mine, I have to own it.
And today we are going to discuss how to add value to the world. Because there's a lot of different ways to do that. I've always believed that if you can be a successful business person, then you can actually add value to the world. And in my opinion, you've done that. You first became a successful business person with hard work. And now that you're there, now you can really use those connections and that influence to add value to the world. And some of the organizations and the charities that you're involved in, I know is adding value. So let's ask the first question, and your insight is just such a beautiful thing. Okay, so in order to add value to the world, I believe you first need to be able to stand on your own 2 feet. This means getting work experience and momentum and learning how large companies operate. What do you think should be your main focus in the first 5 years of your career and then years 6 to 10?
Yeah. So I think the main thing is definitely learning in those first 5 years and gaining confidence in finding your voice. And if you're not sure what you should be learning about in your job, then ask around. Ask others who are in the roles that you aspire to be in the future, as they have walked that journey before and they will have some invaluable experience to share. And I totally agree with you, Adi, that it is important to understand the systems, but also to understand what is not working. And coming to a conclusion about why it's not working also for yourself. Make notes for yourself. It's also not considered polite company to bash a company and expose what you think about their failings are out to everybody. But I think it is important to have some humility and review what you think is not working in a place of work in terms of the culture, the strategy, how they view the operating environment, how they think about competitors, who their customers are, and the technology they are leveraging. And also think about what makes one leader successful and another not. I also appreciate, I think it's also important to appreciate what the generation you belong to can bring in terms of how you can add value, and also what generations before and after your own have to offer. And I think with hindsight, something that I would really encourage everyone to learn about is financial education, especially in the early years. Yes, you might have registered with the commerce faculty, but that doesn't mean you know everything about finance, especially personal finance. And then I think in the later years, it is about how you can influence people to bring about change and work towards a particular goal or mission. And it's quite important to really understand people in your team, how you motivate them, how you encourage them to really do their best. Those, I think, are the key things that one would focus on. Yeah.
Okay, so 2 quick things. It's not actually part of my questions, but while we're rolling with it, I'll ask them both. When do you think is the best time to even voice your opinion? Because timing of mentioning these things, I mean, if you come in too early, you're what we call a nudnik. You're just a complaint, like, who are you? It's your first day here, So that's the first thing, okay? Yeah. And then the second thing is, from a finance perspective, there's different cultures and there's different levels of family responsibility. What is the tricky balance between actually standing on your own 2 feet and then trying to support a family and just getting wiped out like in year 2 and 3, and then not having the finances to go for that one job that maybe is paying less, but it's a better MD?
Yeah. So it's a very good question. It's interesting. My boss, one told me, my most recent boss told me, don't lose your job. That's a basic thing for most people, because that's going to be the primary source of your income for quite some time, especially in your early years while you're building up the savings net. So that does then play into kind of how you voice your opinion. I think, the big thing, that's why I said it's like, do it with humility. You may see something wrong, but try to understand why it's maybe different to what you think maybe should be happening, and try to think about why leaders have decided that, even though you think is different, which actually you assume that everybody in your company is as smart as you are, right? And many of them are going to be smarter maybe. Think about why is it that even though you feel like it might be doing something different, what is it about how they've thought about it that makes it seem like this is the way to go? And if you've gone through that thought process and still think, no, this is not the right thing, then try to identify what is it that they are missing out from an information perspective that you could share with them, and why you think maybe from a logic perspective, run them through your logic of why you think things should change. And still then acknowledge that actually somebody else might be accountable for this thing that you're seeing, and they're still the ones who have to come to the ultimate decision. But yes, you can inform them and give them some other insight that you might have that they might necessarily have seen, in terms of understanding why maybe a different course of action might be the right course to take. So yeah, I think it's, always be mindful of, lots of people say, you refer to things as being beyond their pay grade. I think it's good to recognize when something is beyond your pay grade. But there's certainly, I think everybody always appreciates if you see a different perspective and can give that perspective, but it's about giving it with the care of understanding that somebody else has the right and the responsibility to still make that decision, but you might still have some insight to provide about something they might not be seeing, and where you can then think you can add value.
Fair enough. Okay, good. And the balance between, I guess the first question you answered was keep your job.
Keep your job, exactly.
So that was about voicing your opinion, but also about like supporting family. I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole, but I just want to bring it up as a point. You don't specifically have to answer it, but it is a point. I mean, ultimately, you need to be able to get from A to D.
Yeah. And so I think, I know there's different family circumstances, and the kind of mindset I've always tried to be in is also make sure you're thinking about your own long-term game as well, and where you can then definitely contribute to others and help others. And it's important that you also think about it in terms of monetary and non-monetary assistance, and that people appreciate, I think, both, because it's no use you also, giving so much away that you're also not then looking after yourself. And it will eventually affect you, and it'll affect your job, and then you won't have a job. So that's why I say, I think, be mindful of how, yes, you do need to support your family and friends in many different ways. But think about it. Sometimes it's not necessarily always monetary. Sometimes it's about giving advice or pointing them to a connection who might assist them in different ways. Because that's also important, is to keep your own kind of peace and sanity to do the work that you do, because that's also important to you in terms of your own fulfillment and self-actualization.
Sure. And longevity. Absolutely.
Agreed.
Okay. So thank you. You have shown that to rise to prominence, you need to play the long game and not look for the quick, glamorous money. Is it because your icon has done this? Who do you look up to, and what is it about their career which inspires you so much?
Yeah. So I guess my biggest icons, first and foremost, were my parents. They were very conscientious, and also made many sacrifices for our family, my siblings and I, especially as it relates to our education and our education kind of broadly. So not just schooling, but also investing in travel and the learning that brings. And I guess, so that plays first and foremost about kind of how I think about things. And they certainly play the long game. I've started to realize, they really made a lot of investment in the early time of their career to reap the rewards at a later stage. And after that, I guess as a young child, I remember reading the business section of the Star. And I used to just marvel at the titans of industry featured on the front pages. So those are some of the people who I aspired to be. And I think what inspired me about their careers is that they seemed like they were making a difference. And that's probably what I highlight more. So right now, it's kind of interesting because now startup founders, ecopreneurs, that's a new term I learned from Mark Benioff when I attended Davos last week, the virtual Davos last week, and social entrepreneurs. Those people really inspire me for the same reason. I feel like they have a higher purpose and are making a difference, especially those who focus on sustainability, because when you think about sustainability, it's about intergenerational wellness. And that really appeals to me. However, I will say with no doubt that in high school, my aspiration was to drive a Porsche. And that had a part to play in it and why I became an actuary. Because the guy who came to the careers evening at my school was an actuary who came in a Porsche. But with time and with financial education, like the financial education I mentioned in my previous answer, your priorities change. And yes, it's great if you can still afford a guilt-free supercar without forgoing your savings and investments in your future, then go for it. But you start to realize sometimes it's also about like saving for the future. And it really does give you a lot of freedom when you know that, yes, sometimes you can also take a gap year and invest in yourself because you've saved.
Which you did.
Yes, take some time out to invest in a business and invest in a startup and do the bootstrapping and, that kind of thing, and having the freedom also to, yes, as lots of people kind of quote that, sometimes they're not in a great work situation, and having the freedom to quit without necessarily having another job to go to because you're confident in your abilities, confident that you'll be able to secure another great position and that you can actually live off your savings for a month or 3. Because you've actually invested in saving up all of this other time and investing in yourself from a development perspective, getting those additional degrees and the MBAs and all the other kind of certificate courses that people do. So, yeah.
The Harvard Business School stuff that you've done.
Yes, I was very fortunate my company paid for that. But yes, it's very important. And I think those types of things in terms of the networking that brings is also really important. Yes, you learn stuff in the classroom, but you learn a lot of stuff outside the classroom. And it's quite important to build those friendships, those lifelong friendships. And I'm so thankful for that opportunity because I think that I've been reaping its rewards for long after I had the course end. Yeah.
Lovely, lovely. So for those who don't know me, my name is Adi Kaimowitz, and I've known you, Karabo, for many, many years. My background is that I've been working with actuaries for probably about like 12 years, I think now, 12, 13 years. And I am involved with a business called Virtual Actuary. Yeah. And we're an actuary consulting business, and we work in banking and insurance, and it's going quite nicely. And so that's how I know you. You're an actuary, and I try to know all the actuaries.
Yes, and you're a business owner. And like I say, somebody started their business, and that's kind of the thing which I'm so inspired about is people who are making a difference. And yeah, that's always inspires me. Yeah,
I started on the credit cards, not the savings. And unfortunately, on the old business was there about 8-9 years. And then I closed that down in 2017 and moved to the new one. Now we're 3.5 years in. And that move needed the finance and it was the credit cards. So it was backing yourself is very important.
Backing yourself is very important.
But if you're going to back yourself, you better work till 12 at night because there's nobody else to catch you.
Exactly. For sure.
Okay. In order to add value to the world, you need to choose worthy causes. How do you choose those initiatives? And can you explain why some of them bring you satisfaction?
That's a really good question. So I guess generally my focus at the moment is on like businesses and also initiatives which will have a meaningful impact on the African continent in terms of the perceptions of the continent, shifting them to be more positive. And also for these businesses to fully realize the potential of the African continent and its people. And this brings me a lot of satisfaction, obviously, because I'm here. I was born in South Africa, so I'm an African. And I also don't like how the perspective of this continent is in places like, I think, London and New York, and publications like the Financial Times and the New York Times. It's often a negative one when much of our current challenges are a result of the colonialism and exploitation of the forebears of those in those locations. And I think there is something really important about making sure that we're empowering people, because that actually brings a lot of power and social good. So for me, that's really kind of my focus is on how to support the economic growth on the African continent, and for us to do it our way, making sure we reinvest in what we make into making everything on the continent much better, cutting edge, innovative, but also about then people telling their own stories. And I'm a big fan of the arts, actually. I'm an aspiring patron of the arts. So it's also about the realization that we have great stories to tell, different stories to tell. And it's quite important that more and more people around the world know these stories. So that's something which I'm also kind of really loving is supporting African writers, learning about the different areas of the different on the continent, appreciating our art more. I'm just starting an art tech venture, and that's really focused on the African art market. And so that's some of the things that I really enjoy. And those are some of it's kind of like, maybe that plays into the social entrepreneur space, but or kind of, really focusing on how you think about stakeholder capitalism and bringing in the various stakeholders. And that's quite important in how I think about the things that I'm doing right now.
Amazing. Amazing. We grow up in South Africa, and I was also born here, and we friendly people, lovely, wonderful, Ubuntu and just love and appreciation for each other and just talking nicely to each other. And you don't realize that until, I'm a kite surfer. I live here in Cape Town by Bloberg, which is the kite surfing beach. And we do get overseas kite surfers. They come here and two things happen. Number one, they always say, I just love coming to South Africa. Such friendly people. Well, obviously, we're friendly people. That's what are you talking about? But you only realize later when they are so rude that like a lot of the rest of the world is like rude. And then you actually realize South African people are amazing people.
Yeah.
It's only when you realize what's happening in the rest of the world, that people are gritty and not nice to each other, that you actually realize what a golden continent this is, and how we love each other and we talk nicely. Such an amazing thing. We almost take that for granted.
Agree. Yeah, we call it board too, which is just like your humanity. Like you appreciate some other people's humanity. Yeah. And that's really important. I think that's the way things should be. I think that will really encourage far more prosperity for everyone in the world. Yeah.
Lovely. Yeah. Okay. Adding value to the world means being in a position to do so. This means getting through some of your toughest times. Please, can you share a time in your life where you were feeling completely deflated and what you told yourself and did in order to get out of the situation? I think a lot of people are feeling very deflated at the moment. And I know that hearing how somebody else has managed to break free of this situation will give them the strength to do so themselves.
Sure, yeah, it's a tough one. I guess the one thing which I can think about, it's not really a situation, an example from a work situation, but I summited Mount Kilimanjaro in October 2014. Now, prior to this being told of this opportunity to go on this expedition, I had no recent experience in hiking or camping. I didn't really consider myself fit at all. And I was invited to join this expedition in late July, early August, when most of the other people in the same group had been told that they would be going on this expedition in March or April of the same year. So many people had about a 3 or 4 month training head start to me. But I was really encouraged by a friend, Zandi, who recounted her experience of summiting without much climbing experience or training either. So that's always something which I think is useful, is take encouragement from other people around you. But anyways, I kicked off my training and I went to the gym on this very specific program for climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, which comprised of 6 days of gym time, generally about an hour and 15 minutes in length. And then one day, either hiking or doing the West Cliff stairs in Johannesburg. In Johannesburg, there's a set of stairs on one of the hills. And so it's quite famous for people who are climbing to go there for training. And so I did that, and it would range between 1 hour at the beginning of my training, 8 weeks of training, to about 3 hours of training that I did just before leaving for Tanzania. So the route we used was called the Umbwe route, and you find this on YouTube. There's clips of it online, and it is the quickest but also the steepest way to get to base camp. So we get to base camp on kind of day 4, and then on summit night you leave camp at about 10 o'clock at night. Having arrived at base camp at about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, so not much time to rest. I had been basically taking muscle relaxant for pain for my thighs ever since day 2, because my muscles were just so sore. And then you think about like the fact that we had to leave at 10 o'clock at night. I hadn't eaten much dinner, but you basically had to rush to get going on time because you had to make sure you summit. So you climb in the dark, and in fact, on summit night from camp, all you see are these headlamps of everyone setting off. In what looks like a very steep climb, and it was a startling sight, and I remember it so vividly because it almost looked like there was a diamond necklace hanging in the night sky, very, very dark night sky. So off we went, and you just keep going. You keep just making sure you're taking a step at a time, you know. So I used to kind of say to myself, step by step to myself. And we basically stopped for an hour, a bit of rest, but then you carry on. And it was really cold that night. There was a wind blowing. So there was that wind chill factor that just made the night just much tougher and the climb a little bit tougher. And as you go up, you actually see the night lights from Arusha, which is a town a bit further away on the side of the mountain. And I just remember one of the guides, Eli, who I was walking with, and he just kept encouraging me. So we get to Stella Point, which is at the top of the mountain, not yet at the summit, at around 8 o'clock in the morning. So that's like a solid 6 hours of hiking. And then made our way the further 200 meters to the summit, and we got there at about 8:40 a.m. And it was amazing. But I can tell you that those times before dawn, when you had been hiking for such a long time, 6-7 hours, which was much longer than you'd hiked on any of the other days of the climb. Like I said, you know, your leg muscles are really tired, your calves are tired, you are wearing, 2 sets of gloves because of the cold, and you can't really open your juice bottle, with those gloves. You have to take them off, and then your hands are freezing and just trying to rush to get them back into the gloves. But you can really feel so deflated, but you have to focus on your mission. And, when I was invited to climb Mount Kilimanjaro, I thought, let me take a night to think about it. Because, people die, right? There's like, 20 people out of the 20,000 who die every year. So I thought, let me take a night to think about it. But
not today.
Exactly. So I just decided it's a once in a lifetime opportunity, and that if God willing, it would be safe to summit, knowing that the guides will tell you basically if you are starting to suffer from altitude sickness and cannot summit. But I said I would do everything in my being to get there. So the best was just to go through the pain for the joy of being at the roof of the African continent. And so I think life is like that, it's like this climb to Kilimanjaro. You kind of have like only one chance, right, at it. So, even in the times when you feel deflated, remember what your mission is. And also take encouragement from the people rooting for you to achieve your goals, like my guide, Eli. And just remember that there's other people who have walked the same journey and they got through it. So I think that gives you enough encouragement to make sure that you can achieve anything that life throws at you, any challenges that you might feel like you're going through. Yeah. But it was really special, I must say. Yeah, it's like, that's a bucket list thing. I thought, yeah, if you get the opportunity, go for it. And so that's why I also took my training very, very seriously and encouraged some of my friends to go hiking with me on the weekends. Yeah.
Unbelievable. Okay. Focus on the mission. Very nice.
Focus on the mission. Yeah. Yeah.
What has been, this is the last question. Karabo, what has been the best piece of advice you have ever received, and how have you incorporated it into your life?
I think I've been fortunate to receive so much advice. It's hard to maybe point to one thing, but I guess I can go back to what my parents have always encouraged me to just do, and that's just to work hard and aim to be the best in whatever I'm doing. And I think that's, probably gotten me through a lot of the challenges that I've had, is just, focus on working hard and doing your best. And I guess the thing maybe I would just nuance about that is a lot of people are very humble about their achievements. And I think especially it feels like, women or people who have been, normally are kind of the outcasts of society in some way. And I think in South Africa, I think that happens with a lot of Black South Africans, for example. Many people from different minorities around the world, I think, feel this is like, you feel like you're working very hard, but nobody recognizes it. And so sometimes I think it's important to tell people about your achievements and what you've done, with humility, I think, as well. But, I think, sometimes you can be working hard and it just feels like nobody is understanding kind of the hard work that you're doing. So maybe sometimes share some of the achievements. But I think then it's very important for other people to also look out for the people who are working hard. And other people don't necessarily see that they're working hard and highlight that, wow, look at this person who's working so hard. So it kind of plays both ways, that a lot of people can actually lend other people their power by highlighting the great things that they're doing. Because I think amplifying the work that people are doing in the workplace is quite important. Lots of women feel like they're working very hard, but it's the guys who have the bravado, who are not really achieving much, are getting kind of the kudos. I think then it's important for guys to kind of point out when they see women who are doing really hard work, and so that they can be rewarded for it. Because I think there's a lot of people who do hard work, but unfortunately nobody's kind of seeing the hard work that they do. And I try to do a lot of that in the work that I did, especially at Old Mutual in my role as MD, is really highlight the hardworking women who are in my business, people of color, people with disabilities, really to make sure we're bringing about diversity, because I thought that actually is what would make my team really super performers, is bringing in the voices of people who often were not necessarily given a voice, especially in the workplace. And that I think is really important. So yeah,
very
hard work is really it. Yeah.
Absolutely. And, Virtual Actuary definitely commends you and notices you, which is absolutely why I invited you here. And Karabo Morule, adding value to Africa and in turn adding value to the world.
Thank you so much, Eddie. This has been really fantastic, and thanks for this platform. And I think you're doing really great work and sharing. I think, people who you see are maybe doing something great and sharing it with other people. It's a real gift. So thank you very much for inviting me here as well.
Thank you so much for joining me. Have a beautiful day.
You too. Thank you very much.
Ciao, ciao.